Welcome to Mandorla. We humbly invite you on a journey with us as we explore and deep dive in what it means to be human through this great time of awakening, generously sharing wisdom and practical tools that have helped us on our path of ascension, introducing other conscious leaders within our community to expand the collective mind to new possibilities.
Mandorla inspires us to become balanced in body and soul, feminine and masculine, physical and spiritual, creating a bridge between heaven and earth. Within this podcast, we will be communicating with all parts of ourselves, understanding our true essence, discovering our life's calling, transforming and healing ourselves and the people around us. Without further ado, let us begin.
Welcome to another episode of Mandorla. We're both really excited to be here today. Each week we've been recording, we have been getting more and more excited about what comes through and what topics we're able to discuss and tap into, typically within themes that have been showing up for us. And this week's theme, I feel has really been circulated by unconditional love, and exploring like what that actually looks like, how it looks to receive and to be giving unconditional love. And I guess maybe just starting the conversation in the journey of coming to a place of unconditional love, which I actually see as wholeness. And so yeah, without further ado, I guess we dive into that conversation today and just explore its edges and see what comes through and, share from actual experiences, I guess, that we've been able to ourselves go through.
Yeah, I love that. And what a journey it's been so far. We are literally journeying through each theme and each topic each week to absolute the core. But yeah, unconditional love, there are so many. It should be easy, right? I feel
Yeah.
like that's who we are. That's the essence of, no, I know that's the essence of who we are.
Yeah.
Yet I wonder what wobbles us and kind of, like takes away our clarity of what that looks like sometimes. And yeah.
Well, yeah, I kind of feel like we've been in a matrix of love is conditional. And that's what I guess we've seen in a lot of our lives. And whether we're conscious to it or unconscious to it. And, like that's shown up in religion's the best place to look at it. Like, if we're looking at the Bible, God says, if you do this, you're a sinner and you're going to go to hell. And if you do this, so we've very much been conditioned to not love through what we deem bad. And I know I personally have had a huge awareness and I guess awakening to where I have conditioned how much I can love myself when I deem myself as wrong or doing the wrong thing. And I feel like I am, and I feel like I've already been on the journey of this, but I really feel like it's in my field so loudly now that in order for me to get to a place of wholeness and to love, I have to love my entirety. And something that I've really, really struggled with in this lifetime is loving myself through when I've done the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And like I've made myself so wrong and been my worst and most harshest critic, that I'm learning to love myself in those moments. And I believe that when we're able to get to that place of loving all parts of ourselves, when we're the amazing friend, or sometimes like when we're not the amazing friend, when I think that when we get to that place, then we also hold the vibration for others to experience love through that. So how that looks for me is, if let's say if we have a falling out and I would deem the way that you showed up to be not right, like loving that part of you, because we're human and we're going to make mistakes, and not making that wrong or not judging it, because when I'm judging that in you internally, I'm actually misunderstanding and judging it in self. And that's not unconditional love. Unconditional love says, I see you. And sometimes there's a boundary that has to be put there depending the circumstance. But yeah, basically.
What I'm learning about what you just said, though, is that you may deem what I have done as a mistake, whereas it could be perfect for me. And that is a hard pill to swallow. And I may have fought this definition for a while. However, I'm seeing, especially as a parent, that my way is not necessarily like I may say, oh, my kids have made a mistake because they've gone and pushed the boundary of the rules and all the things, but actually that could be what they're here to do, to experience the polarity, right? So it's actually like not a mistake.
I don't think that like in that moment it's a mistake for either of us. Like that's to love through unconditionally, and we're always going to have our own lens on a situation because we are uniquely different, and therefore we've come to learn things different in this lifetime, but it is never a mistake. And I think that's where in the past I haven't allowed myself to make the mistakes, because if I made the mistakes, I'm a wrong person for it. And so I think that like, you know, you can never show up wrong because it's always perfect. That's unconditional love. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's still landing for me though, like because we have talked about, and this is to go deep, deep, deep and expansive, is like, okay, well, how can we say rapists or murderers or people that have done that much, caused others that much pain and not wrong, right? It's like, it's such a massive topic to cover. But I think to go to where we can do something about this is speaking into who are the best people in your life to teach you unconditional love are our parents, right? Not all of us have necessarily had that example, but what is so empowering about that is that we can become that example for ourselves, or become our own mother and our own father. So when we get so in charge and so self-responsible of what our future or our truth can be, then we get to decide what ultimately would be the best father figure for me, and how can I father myself through that, and how can I mother. And we can take pieces of information from our external. So you may have one of your child's cousins, aunties, blah, 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 like so far out into your field that have the best, what you perceive as the best, healthiest family dynamic. And you can study that dynamic and be like, oh, I love how nurturing that mother is to the son that's having a tantrum right now. Or like, we can take little pieces and be like, oh, what would it look like for me to mother myself like that, and me to father myself like, you know, that father was quite harsh in his boundaries, but then 3 seconds later he was hugging his son. Like, what would that look like for me to father myself like that? That's unconditional love, right? If we come back to what we're talking about.
I see that even through my experience, if like I didn't have that role model within my parents, that role model that did show up that wasn't exactly like that actually still teaches me the same lessons. Like, I actually don't have to go outside and see, like, and it's beautiful too as well. And like, everything is always accessible and always welcomed. But in that respect, I can actually look at that and go, oh, okay. So, for example, if my mum didn't show up as the perfect, unconditional, loving mother that I needed, she was only reflecting where I couldn't mother myself. So still through her example, I still have gotten to a point in my life of going, oh, thank you for giving me that, because now I see that that's what I want to give myself, even through the harder example. Does that make sense?
So it goes back to, you can't get it wrong.
You can't be wrong. And that's what I mean. Like, it's perfectly played out, because we're all here to evolve things. And so whichever way we get the lesson in order to evolve that. So if it is parenting, and if it is learning how to be unconditional parents, sometimes we've got to have the harder scenarios where the unconditional love wasn't met in order for us to go, oh, that's what I'm chasing. Oh, yes, and I want that for my kids too, so that we can evolve it so that that lineage doesn't experience that anymore. And it doesn't always come through if we don't have what we don't have. And so if my lineage has not had that before, somebody has to hold the baton of it. It's not here, but I've got to create it here. Thank you for being that example, because you've shown me what I desire so much. In not giving it to me, now I'm going to create it moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and so like one of the things that I explored over the weekend was, what I realized is there are certain places, and it's not as much as, like I guess when I was unconscious, it's not as much there anymore, but there are still certain areas that I can look at someone else's reality and be like, oh, it sucks that you're there. Like, I want to help you get out of that. And I'll be like, what can I do to get you out? But actually, like, loving that they're there and just loving hard on them and telling them they've got it, and they're doing an amazing job with what they've got, and they're gonna get there, and all the things, are not pulling them out, because when we're trying to pull them out, we're saying it's wrong. And when we're saying it's wrong in them, we're actually saying it's wrong internally within us as well. And so in order to unconditionally love ourselves, when we see our external reality and we make something wrong out there, what we're actually saying is, I wouldn't love myself in here if I was that. And that's not unconditional love.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking out into my reality now going, oh, this is amazing, because now when I reject something out there, I'm actually saying that I would not love myself if I was that. And so the integration from here for me is to come back always to self, and in those moments hold that and go, I freaking love you, you're doing amazing. And give that positiveness, because when we can do that out there, it's actually what we're allowing ourselves internally to accept and to be loved and to hold ourselves and to mother and father ourselves internally. And I believe the outcome of coming to that wholeness and unconditional love is residing in a vibrational frequency of peace, because you'd be at peace with anything that shows up in your reality, because you've accepted and loved it within self.
Yeah. And I think that coming to that peace is that, and talking about the acceptance, is that we are all so different, and how we journey and our vehicles that we choose and everything is never, if we're fully in our authenticity, it's never going to really look the same, right? So we're toying with this in our household, and we're actually getting clearer and clearer and clearer of how different, if that makes sense, clearer on how different. Like, so there's 4 of us, 5 including my daughter's boyfriend, and 5 completely different humans who choose to do life completely different ways. Our values are the same, our morals are the same, our love is the same, totally different. And I have wobbled through this for such a long time. I'm like, guys, why don't you get this? I've already done it all the wrong ways. Like, I know the right way, right? I'm like trying to quantum leap them through the experience until you just realize I'm defeated in that. I just can't do it. Like, you're here to journey equally like I am through life, and we get to choose. And our discernment, which we talked into last week, is going to be different depending on your life experiences, depending on what you're here to do, your passions, like the everything that makes you you, right? How could we possibly have one blueprint? And now I really understand, because I used to be like, where's the blueprint to parenting? Like, where's the blueprint to life and doing it right? But we can't actually have one blueprint when there's too many unique aspects of people that it's just, even the school system, like they probably do better than I give them credit for, because it's really tricky to have that many dynamic humans and school them in the right direction for
Yeah.
the right personality. So I'm actually starting to give more credit than what I probably have in the past, because it's a tricky thing to do.
Understanding somebody else's blueprint when we don't even understand our own most of the time. We're still trying to search for what our blueprint is, what we're here to do, what makes us happy, because we have to almost like take off all the coats that we've put on for other people to re-find ourselves and find that authenticity, to find like what the magic was of us being us in this world, let alone then having a household full of unique ones and trying to understand them. And like, and I feel like this comes back to what I was just saying about like the what we judge outside there is actually what we're judging internally. Well, in this conversation that we're having, like with understanding someone else's blueprint, it's like when we misunderstand it in them because it's not the same for us, when we're misunderstanding it, it's something that yet we haven't yet discovered about ourselves. So there's like like if someone's showing up differently and we're like, what is that? Because we have yet to discover that within ourselves. And so we can misunderstand it or see it as, like what you were just saying, like, oh no, I want to quantum you to here. But we're just misunderstanding something that we yet to discover within self, because we are all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've just redefined what a blueprint is too, because if you think of what a blueprint is in an architectural world, it's creation, right? You create a building with a blueprint, but it starts somewhere. And I actually don't think that we're trying to find the blueprint. I think we're constantly creating the blueprint of who we're here to be and what we're capable of and what our life could possibly look like, right? So how, if we're in creation mode, that's gonna look like, I know, right, sitting here right now, if we had to create in a blueprint our dream home, yours would look completely different to mine. And then next week, if we were going to do it again, it could possibly change. And then in 3 years' time, it could possibly change, because we're evolving or in creation all the time. But imagine if we could like reverse back to when we were born. I think that would be so easier compared to the comparison, and we've talked into this before, of like trying to kind of fit a mold instead of just from the get-go. If I could rewind back to when my kids were little or babies and born, I would be like studying who they are versus teaching them who I think they should be. And just evoking that, oh, that's different. I've not seen that before. I love that that's unique about you. Oh, this characteristic is enjoyable and pleasurable. Let's like love on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it builds like a solidness of, oh, this feels good for me. Like imagine if we could parent ourselves even now. We don't have to go back. We can parent ourselves and be like, oh, this is what makes me different. And oh, my truth today was fiery, but my truth tomorrow could be nurturing, and none is wrong. It's
No,
all
because
right.
I think we're always playing a role in all moments. We're all playing characters for each other. And so there simply isn't any wrong. But I think what's happened in our collective is we've made certain ways of showing up wrong. And I think that's what's ready to fall away. And I think that when we get to that place, we'll love ourselves for showing up in that way, because what that does for someone else, but what it actually does for us too in that co-creation is we are helping each other move forward. And I think that it's undeniable that that's going to happen unless you go and live on a rock somewhere and never see anyone again. And so I personally, the way that I have dealt with when I've showed up what I would deem as wrong, and I've told other people about it and been so devastated, and they're like, that's not even that bad. But for me, the way that I held myself to, but I hurt them. I don't know, I didn't mean it, but it hurt them. The way I treated myself for doing that, that's what's got to be let go. And I can actually feel the density around me right now. So I know that this is where we're going, and I'm happy to like explore this and communicate about it, because that density in me is me. I am that darkness as well as the light. And when I repel that, which, you know, I can feel it right now. When I repel that, and I make it wrong, it just wants to be seen more. It's like, no, you will. It just wants to be loved.
Yeah.
Like, you will come sit with me and you will find a way to love me, because that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for heaven on earth. And in order to get there, I need to love all parts of the human.
Yeah, and I think a really simple 3D way of describing what you're talking about, and I think we've all been here, is actually when, say, I can think of so many scenarios in my life, but say I've done something or perceived that I've done something wrong, and I hold myself to the highest standard. So it doesn't take much, like you, that I deem as wrong to be so hard on myself. But if I didn't have those experiences of, like, what I call wrong is when I'm out of alignment, right? I'll go feed into, say we call, for the sake of women, right? Women can be quite bitchy at times. So say as a teenager, oh my God, man, I'd get on a bitch fest for sure.
Yeah.
That was normalized. However, I'm so, I've done so much refining of who I am. Oh my God, if I even had a little vent these days about someone, I would be like, self-check. Oh, was that bitching? Like, was I putting myself in the energy of da 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 da? When really, so I would deem that as a mistake if I've classed that for me as a bitch fest.
Yeah.
However, if I walk away from that situation, I can see clearly, actually, I was just venting and in a safe place. It's not to say that you are never in the wrong, but for the sake of what we're sort of neutralizing to a light place, we have to sometimes experience those things to go, oh, I didn't like that. Next time I can do better. Or next time I might try it as bringing it back to self. I know, by stating, I know it's actually not about this person, but when they did that, it made me feel, right? So you're redefining what from started as a bitch fest to I'm actually just trying to understand something about myself, and you're redefining that, right? So that was actually not even where I was going with that, but I'm trusting that that's another example. But things that I've deemed wrong about myself, if I hadn't experienced that, I wouldn't know that that's not me. It's like sometimes I'll move a little bit out and go, oh, didn't like that. I actually just choose this now.
Yeah.
And so if we don't allow our children to, say, go and have a couple too many drinks, get a little bit wobbly, make maybe a little bit of a fool of themselves, just an example, and then they don't get to choose for themselves, I do not like how I feel the next day, whether that's a hangover, or I don't like how I have had to do like a little bit of a walk of shame with the people that I've worked really hard to gain respect with. If we don't let them experience that, then you're just like a nagging parent of, this is what happens if you do this. This is what happens. It doesn't actually teach you, right? It's almost like this magnet of like, I want to experience that for myself. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Well, I really want to get to a point that even now, that it's okay if I fall out of alignment. Like, let's say we went away for a weekend and I was hangry and I snapped at you. I don't want to hate on myself anymore for doing those things. But in the past, I'd probably be looping in my head for a week going, why did you do that? How do you make it better? Like, because I'd be rejecting that I actually did that. But I want to get to a point now that, like, you know what? I'm really sorry if I do that. Like, and I know that for whatever reason it would be perfect for you, but I still love that I did that. Like, I love myself even though I did that, you know, because I actually think that I can't hold myself to the standard I used to anymore, because that expectation on me and that tightrope that I've walked, when I fall accidentally, even if I didn't mean it, even if I'm like, oh my God, that's not what I meant, even if it came from love when I did it and it showed up differently for you and it upset you, I can't explain the level of depression that puts me in, to think that I'd hurt somebody else. And I think that this is where I actually just want to get okay with it. And I know that if I got angry and if I got snapped at you, you'd be like, whoa, that's not Katrina, right? And you'd be like, are you all good? Like, do you want to, like, we'd work it out, right? Like, I know that you'd be able to do that. I know that that's possible, but doesn't mean that it was possible for me to love myself for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where, like, I want to get to, because then when people are around me and they make mistakes like that, I don't have to take it personally. I can just be like, oh, babe, what's going on?
Not take things too seriously. My kids are teaching me this so much, especially Mason, because he's all about lightheartedness. And so we've got this little bit of a running joke in our house of like, too soon, because we'll make jokes about something mistakes that we've all made.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a little like, like a little bit of a tease or a joke.
Yeah.
And then we'll be like, too soon. But it always makes us all laugh, because it's just bringing light to the fact that it's not that serious. Like, come on. I mean, Mason's been grounded for a month now, and we just laugh our way through it, because the consequence is not going to change.
Yeah.
But we can either be like, we can make it hard, or we can just have fun with it. The consequence is a consequence. It's a month.
Yeah.
Deal with it. However, we've had so much fun through it. Has he still learnt? Absolutely. Is he ever going to do that thing again? Nope. Well, I really hope so. But if he does, like we'll
cross that bridge.
Where we come. Yeah, the mistake will be what he will choose. However, it's just like being more lighthearted.
I realize how much Layla has been trying to show me this, and I've been unable to see it. And so what I know about our relationship is, when she's been loud and unreasonable and in her stuff, I get to the point where I'm like, just stop that behavior. It's not necessary. And I'm like, just stop. And what I know to be true is that as soon as I lean in with love with her, she immediately stops this. And I think that, like, she's been playing this out with me for a while now, and I'm like, I just find it so hard to hug her when she's being so unreasonable and she's projecting, and she's even sometimes like telling lies, right? Because I'm like, lying is the worst thing you can do. Like, and I'm dumping on her because I don't want her to be that. But actually, I've noticed every time, and it's been hard for me to do so, but if I say, come here, like, and I give her a hug and we melt into each other, and I'm like, it's all right, she gets it.
Yeah. She's like, that's all I really wanted,
that's all
Mum.
I needed. You just need to love me when I'm doing the wrong thing. Doesn't mean that I don't have the conversations after that of like, hey, like, we really don't want to do that. That can hurt other people, and I lose trust when you do that. And like, I can still talk about all the things, but before I was rejecting her. So she's the classic example of like, my God, I would never lie, because the rejection I would have with myself if I lied, that's standard. Like, of course I don't want to lie, but she's allowed me to see so clearly for the last couple of months, and it's all making sense so much now, but like, where I am not willing to love myself.
And if we think about, like, what I know about lying is people lie when they don't feel safe, right? They can't come with a complete transparent truth because of the reaction, or they don't feel like they could because they're scared of the reaction.
Well, also, if that is the case, they wouldn't want, if they're treating themselves so badly for what they've already done, do you think they want to load that up with more people knowing what they did?
I'm already feeling bad enough. I don't need that from an external source.
But I think connection is paved through showing up in that. I think that when I say to you, hey, I've got this going on right now, this is what I think is showing up between us right now. Can you help me see? In that vulnerability and me being like, oh, this is mine. I know it's mine and I'm sorry, but I need to help see it. You like that co-creation ends up becoming so healing for me, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it becomes healing for you too, because I'm showing up in something that you may not have thought that it'd be safe to show up in. And I've been the example of that. And then what you know is that if I can do it, you can do that too. And all of a sudden, we have a safety net here that it's okay, because we're going to co-create together anyway, right? It's okay for us to make mistakes, and it's okay for us to think something means something, and it may not. But without having that communication, without leaning into that vulnerability, without me going, oh, I think I have something really yucky here and I need to communicate to you about what I'm seeing in myself, and I'm sorry if I'm doing that. Without having that communication and owning that, then there's no healing that occurs. And so, I mean, I can openly communicate about, like, when we started this podcast and we were discussing all matters of it, like the creation of it, the physical structures of it, the energetical way that we were going to move through it, because, you know, I'm not doing this on my own. So, like, both of us were doing that. And I realized in each moment there was a subtle undercurrent, and I wasn't conscious to it, but of control showing up within me. And I was like, ugh, like, that's not who I want to be. And because we always grow through these, and because we are the people who are like, oh my God, yes, I want to change that. Like, it allowed us to, and for me to have the courage to be like, hey, I think I've been doing this. Like, that's not what I meant to do. I didn't realize I was doing it. Like, fully owning that part. Like, I'd say that is a part of darkness, right? Witnessing, I realize I think I was doing that because if I had that form of control here, then it feels safe for me. But I don't need to do that with you. And I don't know what your co-creation in this is, because you would have been a vibrational match for me doing that. And then I can hand the baton over and go, hey, there might be something for you to look at here together. And together we get to grow, right? But if I didn't acknowledge that darkness within myself and where that came from, and it's always come from either trauma or abandonment or like fear, like, and so I know that I didn't mean it, but obviously there was a part of me that felt like I needed to create safety here within this environment of doing this together. And I realized I needed to release that. I didn't need to have that with you, but it did show up. And I loved myself through that.
We really achieved that in this dynamic, didn't we? And it makes me wonder what else is possible and how can we take what we've learnt in this scenario into parenthood and into relationships, because I feel like it's actually the same thing. So what did we learn? Like, how did that look when you were like, okay, I think there's a control thing. We had a conversation.
Yeah.
So what did it take to release that control?
Well, for me, I feel like it was the willingness to say, like, I had to be okay with my worst case scenario showing up. So I had to be okay with, you might walk away from this and this might not be a duo thing anymore.
That did happen.
I had to be okay with, I don't know what you're going to talk about, but I'm willing to talk about anything. So I fully trust what you're going to say in every single moment because I've got me. And so there was a lot of, like, I had to build the solidness within myself in order to let that, in order to let that go.
It comes down acceptance because you're so onto it. So now this is the tricky part and can trigger a lot and absolutely what I'm still working on. But if I think about some of the challenges that I've had parenting, it's that because it's accepting our worst case scenario. So say my son goes out on his motorbike and he hurts himself. Like, I love that kid more than anything in the world. Like, oh my God, could I have prevented that? You know, you'd go into all of that. What's my role? Could I have prevented that? Right? But actually, in order for him to do what he came here to do, and he's at that age where he's going to, whether it's now or in 5 years' time, he's going to go and do life the way he chooses, right? So do I have to come to the acceptance of, okay, well, maybe he might hurt himself. And then if I take it to the I don't even want to right now, but that would be my next level of growth. What is the absolute worst case scenario? Coming to that acceptance, and then, accepting that everyone has their choice, because he might go and choose to be silly on a motorbike and have the most gnarly time and end up on bloody freestyling Kings or something and make it his whole life. Or he could go and have an accident, but that could be the wake up call too for him to go, oh yeah, tried that, didn't work. Who am I to dictate that? Like, he came in with a contract of how he wanted to live his life. I don't really get to choose that. Yes, I can guide and bring things to his awareness, but that's the acceptance, right? Because that is unconditional love. When you love someone that much to let them choose how to do life, that is the ultimate. And me as a teenager, man, I'm gonna listen to this back. Oh my God, listen to this back and like play it to my teenage self, because that's what I needed to hear. I needed to hear, you get to do life your own way. Because I was going to do that anyway. But I would have loved to be loved through that instead of made wrong, right?
Yeah.
I think that would have helped me stay on my own course a lot more.
Yeah, I feel like as children, I can definitely reflect back to my childhood. I was very much like Layla. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to let you know if something's off here. Like, I was very loud. I didn't let things slide if I seen them or deemed them to be wrong in the home. And the personalities in my home were more of just let it go. Like, shh, don't say anything. Don't. And I was the opposite of that. So I was like a hurricane in my home. I would be like, nope, injustice, Libran and me, injustice. And because of that, I just needed to be held in that. It's who I am. It's who I was here to be. Like, I am here to absolutely, like, that's my drive. That's my, like, willpower. It's my nature. And it serves me so well now. I needed to be loved in that as a kid.
Or accepted, right? Because can you imagine if you just said your opinion and said your piece and your family or friends were like, okay, that's an interesting opinion, Katrina. And they just listened and they just accepted it and didn't fight you or say, no, my opinion's right, or da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
If we just went, okay, well, you get to believe that.
Yeah.
And it's like religion, right? There's no wrong or right, but if you believe that, then that's absolutely fine. And in spirituality, if that's what makes you feel good about your life, then absolutely acceptance. There's no need to fight anymore. There's nothing to fight against, because it's just, then we come back to the whole love that you were talking about.
Yeah, because then you can go, oh my God, we're so different. I freaking love that about you. It's not for me, but oh my God, I love that. And then you'd be love bombing in every moment, because you're not trying to go, oh no, but I'm not that. Where are you going? Like,
but it will help
that.
you understand someone, because if someone has such a different belief system and you listen to understand, and then you get curious and ask questions, I bet you'll find in their history and in their past, that makes sense that you believe that, because look at what you've lived and this and that, and you get to learn about someone. That again forms that connection of real intimacy and love. And we don't just have to hold these intimate and loving relationships with our partner or our kids or our family. We get to learn and have those intimate relationships. You can form that intimate relationship within 2 minutes with a stranger if you are really good at acceptance and getting curious and listening.
Which I think is like, we're so good at accepting when someone is showing up in a certain way, but it is so hard when they are showing up in a way that we would deem wrong. And I think this is where we're getting to, is like, there is no wrong or right. There's no wrong or right. When we're saying no to it out there, we're saying no to it internally. So if I seen someone, let's say that, look, there's so many different areas that I'm now discluding as even being wrong. So I'm finding it hard to even find something. But let's say something come to me. Okay, let's say my husband cheats on me, right?
I knew we were going to go here
Oh,
with
really?
this, with the partners, because we talked about kids and friendship.
Okay,
but
yeah, it's
this
coming
is
back to
really
partners.
important.
Yeah. So like if my husband were to have an affair on me, last week I would have said to you, done. Out the door you go. No love here. I would be broken. I'd be hurt. I'd be shattered. My family would be shattered. All of the things. And I would not have, I don't believe, gotten to a point of true forgiveness for what he had done, because that would have felt so wrong. My now week's belief around this is if he did that, I could love him. I wouldn't accept it. Yes, we would break up, like 100%. I don't think that
You
I
would
could.
still get to acceptance in a different way, and you still might choose to not be together, but you would accept that that's where he's at,
Yeah,
right?
I would love him through it, and I'd say I'm not sure what led you to do that thing that you've done that has now created this different environment that we're gonna live in, but
Loving.
yeah, we're gonna love in, but I'm going to love you because you are an amazing person and you've just made a mistake. And I can't hate you for that. I couldn't anymore. I would have before.
Yeah.
100%, because I wouldn't give myself permission to do such a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is unconditional love. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean we have to choose it. Doesn't mean we have to live with it. Doesn't mean that, but at the end of the day, I do get to love someone through their mistakes, through whatever pain it was that they were in that took them to that moment. Not my responsibility, but I get to love. And I literally would have told you a week ago, absolutely fucking not.
So the difference between a week ago and where your stance is right now is that you've learnt to love yourself at a new capacity.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that you can get to where you are right now and even voice that. Because I know that we'll have multiple listeners that are like, absolutely not. And don't worry. I was with you last week going, absolutely not. But I understand now, and I don't expect that everyone will be where we are right now. But I promise you'll get there if you keep working on yourself and keep learning to love yourself unconditionally, accepting mistakes as what they are again and again and again. But yeah, it is, and that's freeing. That's like, that's who we are, right?
Well, if we look at triggers, right? Triggers outside of us are only to help see internally what's going on. If you get to a place of wholeness and unconditional love within, those triggers don't exist outside you anymore, because there's nothing to
for you
see,
to
because
learn
you're
too.
in inner peace of, I am the deepest, darkest, most horrible things, and I'm also the most amazing things. Doesn't mean I have to play it out. I don't want to be those deepest, darkest things, but if they do, can I love myself through that? That's the journey. That's the integration. I hope that I don't have to play that out, but I absolutely witness that I am all of that. And if I'm saying no to it out there, I'm saying no to it in here. And I believe that when we have our reality showing us those things and we're in rejection of it, it's the opportunity for us to lean in and go, no, I actually get to love that. I don't think that you're doing the right thing right now, but I'm not going to reject you for what is occurring, because that's occurring for whatever reason it needs to occur for you, you know? Does that make sense? It's
and
like,
sometimes I think we've been conditioned to believe that we have to be the consequence, right? So if I'm not hard and if I don't give you a lecture, then you're not going to learn this lesson. Well, actually, we can just choose self-love, right? And in that case, you're saying, and case by case, but losing you would be consequence enough from that. Like karma and the natural laws of life works itself out. Or him having to sit, like you've talked about before, us having to sit with the discomfort of like, I didn't like how I showed up, or I didn't like that I chose that. And that self-discovery is consequence enough. We don't necessarily need anyone to play that role of you're going to learn this lesson. And talking this out now, I'm reminding myself as a parent that, okay, where can I release myself and love myself enough to not have to be such a dictator out of fear? And it's all from fear. Like, I just don't make those mistakes that I've made, or don't choose to do life the hard way. Like, I know a better way, right? I don't actually have to play that role. And I say that now, but I know I'm going to have many weeks, months, maybe even years of integrating that and practicing that and reminding myself again and again and again that love really is the answer. And what does that look like? I couldn't even describe it to you right now, because we will have to go and live it. We'll have to learn it through life.
I've even been able to witness myself go to a new level of love for a severely abusive relationship that I went through. And after this weekend and my epiphanies and all the things that have come through in understanding unconditional love, and I'd already gone through a process of healing with that person that I had a 6-year relationship with. I had already gone through so much love and forgiveness for what had occurred. But this new level that I processed through my mind over this weekend just gone is I actually get to love him still now, even though he's not well and he has caused a lot of pain and hurt to many, many people. Getting tingly leg. I do love him. And I don't know, when you've been through that much trauma, I don't know how long that takes each individual to get there, but I'm so proud of myself for getting there because I can literally see him in my mind's eye and be like, I love you. I'm sorry that you had to play that for me. I'm sorry that I poked you in a way that created that. Like, all the things, because my darkness was in that room with him. When he would act in aggression, I would be like fire to it. I'd be getting a torch and I'd be putting metal fire on him, metal on metal. And that's my darkness, right? I was in my darkness with him in his darkness. No, I didn't get abusive, but what I was doing was not helping the situation, and I have to forgive myself for that. And forgiving myself for that allows me to come to unconditional love for him, because I know where that came from. That and that fire came from me. I didn't want to hurt him, but it would have been. That would have been absolutely hurting him. And so it helps me to find such a depth of like love for someone that even caused trauma, pain.
Yeah. And I mean, you're exploring every facet of that, but the ultimate unconditional love was that you left that relationship, so you can love him from a distance, and 100%. You can see it and have compassion for all the elements, but the absolute example for the best thing you ever did, the best thing that you could have done for him was to leave him and be like, absolutely, I'm going to love myself enough to never experience that again. And that's the father self, as I see it. You fathered yourself out of that situation.
I think if, like, knowing what I know now, I would have left him. Like, if I were to play this out again now and I'm about to leave a relationship that's severely toxic like that, I would pour love on him and put the boundary in and say, I will absolutely not play this role with you anymore. It is over, but I love you and I send you so much love on your journey moving forward, but it won't be with me.
Yeah.
What I did.
What a beautiful example right there.
Yeah, what I did when I was younger, but was like...
Make him wrong for it.
Oh, mate, the projection and
which never actually changed anything, right?
And it was all him. I didn't have a role in that. I was the innocent victim. But actually the truth is it took two to tango. And that's really hard when you're in a toxic relationship like that. It is really hard to own that you are playing a role in that. in whichever manner it is, it's a co-creation. I now know there could have been so much more I could have owned, and that could have helped him to go on. It was never meant to be, but that could have helped him to move on to his next journey and next phase of life in a different way. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't my responsibility, but if I were to encounter such a problem with a toxic person in my reality now, how I would do things would be so differently, because I wouldn't project, reject, deem unforgivable, all those things. I would absolutely break what is happening, but I would tell them I love you and I hope you get help.
Yeah, which is easier in hindsight, right? But to even go back to even someone in that situation, it's steps along the process. And I think our last couple of episodes are perfect. It's not taking responsibility for what's not yours. You can take responsibility for your aspects, but not his. It's discernment, right? Where it's even possible to stay when someone's going to change and when they're not, and leave when they're not. So last week's discernment. Yeah.
Yep.
And then this week's unconditional love, which is where you're at right now.
And like acceptance with what was.
Yeah, acceptance. And you can be there now because of all the steps that you've taken in between there.
What I'm actually getting right now, but was because he would become really possessive on me when I was trying to leave, right? That was like, it would be like a magnet, like being sucked back to me. And I'd be like, oh my God, I can't get out, right? But that's the same as what actually occurs with Layla. She just needs to be told that she's loved, and then she moves on.
Yeah, right.
I think that in hindsight now, that's what's dropping in.
Yeah,
that he just
that makes
needed
sense.
Because I think he was hating himself so much for what he had done, on top of the fact that he couldn't control it, that it was hard for him as well from his past traumas, that maybe the years that it took me to get out of that could have been
quantum leaped
way quicker than, and I'm getting chills again.
Yeah.
Could have been way more, just because I could have met him with love instead of full rejection.
Yeah.
Because I think that was too much for him to already be harboring that on himself, and then me doing it to him as well.
Yeah, well, which is that quote, love will set you free, right?
Yeah.
Actually. Actually.
Yeah.
And without further ado, we are at a good amount of time right now. So I feel like we've wrapped that up. But I think we leave people on love will set you free, whether that's internally within relationships, you know, learning what we learned about the recap of not taking responsibility for what's not yours, the discernment of knowing when to lean in and lean out. And if we are ending something, then, you know, full love to the biggest capacity that we have, and what's appropriate with case by case, mostly for ourselves.
But I think that's just so healing. I think that's, yeah.
Lovely. Whoa, we've covered a lot of ground.
That was a huge subject today.
That was massive. So thanks everyone for joining us. And as we talk these massive concepts out, don't be alarmed if it doesn't land as you first listen, because even for us, it doesn't necessarily land in the moments, but what we find is the week ahead, it does. Piece by piece, puzzle piece by puzzle piece, we get the epiphanies, which is what you stated over the weekend. You had the epiphanies, which leads us to the next topic and the next topic. So even when you don't feel like you may grasp the concept, just trust you and what makes you, and you'll take away what you need for it to land in your precise, authentic way.
Yeah.
Which will be different but perfect. Whether it's this much or whether it's this much or whatever is needed will land.
Yeah,
so
always perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without further ado, everyone have an amazing, magical week.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us in another episode of Mandorla. We want to acknowledge your contribution in the co-creation of our new evolved world.
Sending you all so much love, and until next time, remember, you are the creator.